Hello dear viewers. I'm glad to welcome you back to the channel. Today I present my newest original story. My mother's a pensioner. You earn more. So starting this month you're covering her utilities and groceries. Don't like it. I'm walking out. Kostya's voice rolled through the kitchen like a gong struck in an empty room. He stood in the middle of it, fists on his hips, visibly savoring the effect he'd just produced. Chest puffed out, chin tilted skyward. The gaze of a conqueror who just planted his flag on some unconquered summit. For this historic announcement, he'd even dressed up in a fresh shirt Lena had ironed for him the night before. Lena, meanwhile, stood at the counter, steadily rolling out stiff dumpling dough with a wooden pin. A thin dusting of flour covered the board. The air smelled of dill and fresh meat. She didn't flinch, didn't drop the rolling pin. She simply lifted her eyes to her husband, taking in his pose. Kostya had puffed himself up as though he'd swallowed a bicycle pump instead of his morning coffee. Lately her husband had gotten hooked on videos by nameless internet gurus preaching about male backbone and putting women in their place. The only snag was that Kostya was trying to demonstrate his newfound backbone on someone else's property. The apartment in which he now planted his feet so majestically belonged to Lena. She'd inherited it from her grandmother, gutted it down to the brick, and renovated it herself. Kostya had moved in 3 years ago, before they'd even met this particular alpha guru phase, arriving with 2 gym bags and 1 enormous gaming tower. Since then his contribution to the household had been limited to buying fish food for the aquarium and the occasional philosophical musing about how a woman ought to inspire her man. Lena worked as a confectioner freelance, private orders, multi-tiered wedding cakes, sugar flowers, and made quite good money. Kostya, for his part, was finding himself. The search took place mostly on the couch. He picked up occasional computer, repair gigs and poured most of what he earned into graphics, card upgrades and carbon fishing rods. And now, an ultimatum. Did you hear me? Kostya pressed, leaning forward. Tomorrow's the 1st. Mom's bills are on the hallway table, and get her proper food, meat, fish, vegetables. She's elderly, she needs vitamins. If I find out you ordered her the cheap pasta, you'll answer for it. I won't tolerate disrespect. Straight out the door. Lena brushed the flour from her fingers and looked at Kostya, then turned her gaze to the window, where the spring sun glinted off the roofs of parked cars. In her mind, she rang up the receipt of their life together like a cash register. 70% of the budget on her, the cleaning on her twice, weekly phone calls fielding his mother's complaints. Also on her. She searched for a single item on the credit side of Kostya's presence in the house. He could reach jars on the top shelf, sure, but a step stool did the same job silently, without demanding meat for dinner. Fine, Lena said calmly. Not a single muscle on her face moved. She'll have it by lunch. Kostya actually deflated a little at how easy that was. He'd clearly rehearsed this scene half the night, prepared his arguments, planned to crush her with authority and shut down her tantrums, and instead, just, fine. Well, good then, he muttered, trying to hold on to his air of a fearsome overlord. About time. You'd really let things slide. Forgot who wears the pants around here. By the way, I'm heading to the lake with the guys today, grilling shashlik. I'll be back late. Don't bother cooking for me. He spun on his heel and went to the bedroom to gather his tackle. Lena picked the rolling pin back up. The dough yielded easily, took whatever shape she pressed into it. Much like her life would, over the next few hours. 40 minutes later the front door slammed. Kostya vanished into the haze, leaving behind an unwashed mug and muddy boot prints in the entryway. Lena waited exactly 2 minutes, walked to the door, and turned the deadbolt. She didn't need to invent a plan. It had already formed in her head the instant Kostya said the word. Leave. Lena didn't believe in scenes. Scenes burned energy. She believed in efficiency. First she grabbed her phone and dialed a number scrawled on a scrap of cardboard taped up in the elevator. Hello, moving service. Hi, I need a van and 2 movers right now. Not much, but some of it's heavy. Yes, address downtown. I'll be waiting. She tossed the phone onto the ottoman and went for containers. 3 enormous duffel bags had been gathering dust on the top shelf for ages, bought once for a friend's move. Homely looking things, but capable of hauling a cast iron bridge. Lena threw open the bedroom closet. She didn't bother sorting by season, matching collars, or carefully folding jeans. That wasn't her job. She simply scooped Kostya's belongings up in armfuls and dumped them into the bottomless maw of the first bag. Shirts, sweaters, unmatched socks, boxers, palm tree shorts. All of it went into the pile. Having emptied her husband's shelves, she moved on to the bathroom. Off went his shower gills, Arctic storm and bear musk scented. His razor, his comb, the half-used tube of toothpaste. In went the terracloth towel he never once hung back on the rail. The second bag swallowed the holy of holies of Kostya's existence. Everything from his fishing gear that hadn't fit into his morning backpack. Boxes of lures, spare reels, a fish finder, rubber boots like 2 grimy little tanks, and some horrifying folding stool that always smelled of duckweed. Lena ruthlessly crammed in hooks and floats, delighting in the space opening up in the closet. But the main event awaited her in the living room and on the balcony. In the corner stood it. A tower PC the size of a small nightstand, glowing with neon trim even when unplugged from the wall. Kostya practically worshipped this thing. Carefully, so as not to break anything. Damaging his property wasn't part of her plan. Lena unplugged every cable, wound them into a rough coil, and dropped them into the third bag, followed by the monitor, keyboard, and mouse. One final touch remained, Lena's pride and pain. She opened the balcony door. There, towering like a black rubber fortress, sat the winter tires. 4 massive studded wheels. Kostya hadn't owned a car in a year and a half. He'd sold it to invest in some friend's dubious startup, which had predictably collapsed. The tires had stayed behind. I'll get a new ride soon, no point selling them, they're basically new. He'd insist, while the tires ate up half the balcony view and perfumed the air year-round with the scent of a tire shop. Lena gave the bottom tire a kick. Your time has come, boys. She smirked. The intercom buzzed. Ma'am, we're here. Which floor? Crackled a gravelly voice. 5 minutes later, 2 movers were shuffling around the hallway. One tall and wary, with the face of a man who'd seen far too many other people's secrets, the other stocky and squat in a blue jumpsuit. Okay guys, here's the route, Lena said briskly, arms crossed. These 3 bags. The computer tower, very carefully, no shaking. And on the balcony 4 tires. All of it goes to 8 Stroitley Street. Unload right by the entrance. The wary one whistled at the size of the tires. Stroitley Street, got it. Someone meeting us there? His mother. Lena said sweetly. A loving mother will be waiting. Go ahead. Gentlemen. The clock's running from now. The work began. The stocky one hoisted 2 bags at once, huffing them toward the elevator. The wary one wrestled with the tires. Lena stood in the hallway, physically feeling the apartment grow larger. With every item carried out the door, she breathed a little easier. Gone was the smell of stale rubber. Gone was the dark hulk of the computer tower. Gone was the aura of a man who believed that simply owning a pair of pants was reason enough to be worshipped. Once the door closed behind the movers, Lena got out the mop. She scrubbed the entryway floor clean of Kostya's boot prints, then threw the windows wide open, letting in the fresh spring breeze. She brewed herself a strong green tea with jasmine, sat down on the couch, and, sipping the hot drink, called herself a cab. She needed to make it in time for the finale of the play. As for footing the bill for her mother-in-law's little celebration, that was never in her plans. Zinaida Pavlovna was gearing up for her moment of triumph. The morning had started with wonderful news. Kostya's call woke her just after 10. Her son was brief but utterly convincing. He announced that he'd finally put his little madam in her place, shown some real backbone, and laid down the law hard. I told her straight. Kostya boomed into the phone over the noise of the wind outside. Mom. Either she takes you on full support, pays for electricity, water, orders you proper groceries, or I pack up and leave. You should have seen her face. Mom turned to Silk right away. Nodded, said she'd have delivery arranged by lunch. So expect a courier. Mom, I'm off to the lake to relax. Zinaida Pavlovna listened to her son and glowed. There he was, a real man, raised right. Not for nothing had she brought him up with a firm hand, drilled into him that women these days had gotten far too crafty, that you had to keep them on a short leash. She'd never been able to stand that Lena from day one. Far too independent. Her own apartment, her own money. Instead of bowing to her mother, in law and gratitude for landing such a prize of a man, she'd always carried herself with an attitude. Never once dropped everything to run an errand at a moment's notice. I have orders, Zinaida Pavlovna, I'm working. And now, completely broken in. Lenka had finally understood that a man like that wasn't one to lose. Who'd want her anyway, at 30, a divorcee with dough under her nails? Zinaida Pavlovna stepped up to the old Soviet-style mirror in the hallway, adjusted her perm, applied bright cherry lipstick, put on her finest burgundy coat and a silk scarf. Today she wouldn't step outside as a mere pensioner. Today she would step outside as life's grand winner. The courtyard of her old 5-story building was living its usual morning life. Pigeons pecked around the peeling wooden sandbox. On the bench by the entrance, the Supreme Court was already in session. 3 neighbor women. Presiding as chief prosecutor was Aleftina Ivanovna, a thin, sharp-tongued old woman with a gaze that missed no detail. Beside her sat plump, good-natured Nina Vasilievna, hard of hearing in her left ear, and silent Maria, endlessly knitting a gray scarf. Zinaida Pavlovna swept out of the entrance like an imperial yacht leaving harbor. She nodded regally to the neighbors, stopped a little off to the side, leaned on her elegant cane umbrella, and began ostentatiously checking her wristwatch. What'd you get all dolled up for so early, Zina? Aleftina Ivanovna cast her line at once. Off to the clinic. No cardiologist slots though. I already called. What clinic, Alia? Zinaida Pavlovna smiled condescendingly. I'm waiting on a courier. Should be here any minute. A courier. Nina Vasilievna repeated, cupping her ear. Ooze cursing. A courier, I said. From a restaurant. Zinaida repeated louder. My daughter-in-law ordered delivery. Aleftina Ivanovna stopped cracking sunflower seeds. Her eyebrows shot up. Your daughter-in-law? Your Lenka? Since when does she pay for your restaurants? You two were at each other's throats last month over some old pot. You were shouting to the whole yard that she was stingy. Zinaida Pavlovna squared her shoulders. My son put her in her place fast. Now she's not just covering my utilities. She's paying for my food too, she announced, loudly, with relish, addressing the whole bench at once. My Kostik pounded his fist on the table yesterday and told her, my mother will want for nothing. You earn plenty. Share it. Don't feed her. Don't pay her bills and I'm gone, and guess what? The women held their breath, even Maria stopped knitting. And what? Aleftina pressed. And that was that, Zinaida said, chin lifting in triumph. She got scared, said she'd handle everything. So here I am, waiting on the delivery. Kostik insisted on meat, red fish, fruit. Now we'll finally live well. I always told my boy, women need managing, or they'll climb right up on your neck. Lenka understands now who she's got, aside from my Kostik. Aleftina Ivanovna narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Your Kostik, Zina, borrowed 1,000 off me last Tuesday till payday and still hasn't paid it back. Said it himself. Became a real man. Envy quietly. Aleftina, Zinaida snapped back. My son is on his way up, and he raised his wife right. Now I've got my own personal sponsor. She glanced back down the road. A vehicle was crawling along the courtyard drive, lurching over potholes. But it wasn't the courier's nimble yellow bike, nor some cramped little delivery hatchback. Into the yard, engine roaring and exhaust belching gray smoke, crept a battered box truck. It stopped directly opposite Zinaida Pavlovna's entrance, blocking the road. The engine coughed once and died. The women on the bench went quiet. Zinaida Pavlovna blinked her false lashes in confusion. The cab door clanged open, and a tall, wary man dropped heavily onto the cracked asphalt. A stocky one in a blue jumpsuit climbed out the passenger side after him. They circled the truck, threw back the iron latches, and swung open the cargo doors. "Ma'am," the wary one called out, scanning the yard. "Who's receiving?" "Zinaida Pavlovna." "Sign for the delivery." Zinaida Pavlovna took a mechanical step forward. Something unpleasant twisted in her gut, but her brain still refused to connect the dots. "Is this from the restaurant?" she asked timidly, trying to peer into the dark belly of the truck. The mover chuckled, pulling on his work gloves. "Yep, chef's special. Careful now, coming through." The stocky one climbed into the cargo hold and, with a dull thud, rolled an enormous winter tire onto the pavement. A second followed. A third. A fourth. The studded monsters lined up in a row before the stunned mother-in-law. "What is this?" Zinaida Pavlovna squeaked, taking a step back. Her burgundy coat no longer looked regal. It seemed to droop off her suddenly shrunken shoulders. "Tires, ma'am. Winter ones, barely worn," the wary mover reported matter-of-factly. "Come on, Talian, bring the boxes." Out of the truck's belly emerged the giant computer tower. The mover set it down gently beside the tires. On top went a coil of cables and a gaming mouse. Zinaida Pavlovna recognized that box. She'd seen it every time she visited her daughter-in-law's, her precious son parked in front of it for hours, furiously clicking buttons and shouting into a microphone about some goblins. Aleftina Ivanovna on the bench grunted and adjusted her grip on the umbrella. Nina Vasilievna craned her neck. This promised to be legendary. Next came 3 enormous checkered duffel bags, zippers straining. One bag was so overstuffed the zipper had burst, and out of the gap poked, unmistakably, a sleeve of Kostia's hoodie and the edge of a pair of well-worn family briefs. Last out came the fishing rod case and a pair of green rubber boots. The pile of belongings towered over Zinaida Pavlovna like a monument to shattered hopes. "Hey, what are you doing?" Zinaida finally found her voice. "Take this junk back, you've got the wrong address." "What tires? Where's the sushi rolls? Where's the steaks?" Just then a yellow taxi pulled into the courtyard, braking smoothly behind the truck. The rear door opened, and out stepped Lena. She looked wonderful. Light jeans, a stylish trench coat, dark hair loose and gleaming in the sun. Her face was calm. Not a trace of malice or hysteria. Just the businesslike composure of someone who had just wrapped up an important project. Lena walked up to her frozen mother-in-law, pulled a folded slip of paper from her pocket, and smiled sweetly, warmly. "Just as we agreed, Zinaida Pavlovna," Lena said, her voice carrying clearly so the women on the bench wouldn't miss a word. "Kostya told me this morning. If I don't support and feed you, he's leaving that very day." He laid down the ultimatum firmly, real backbone on display. She paused. Aleftina Ivanovna nodded along approvingly, soaking up every word. "And like an obedient wife, I didn't argue. I made my choice," Lena went on, sweeping a hand toward the pile of bags. "Please accept your provider onto your own balance sheet. I packed everything carefully and delivered it myself. Fishing gear, the computer, even the winter tires. Didn't forget a thing. Kostya himself is at the lake right now. He'll be back tonight, hungry. Best get that red fish and fruit ready, just like he asked." Zinaida Pavlovna stood there red as a lobster. The color crept up her face, her neck, her ears, blending seamlessly with her burgundy coat. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on dry land. Words caught in her throat. Her eyes darted between the computer tower, the underwear poking from the bag, and Lena's faintly amused smile. "Oh right." Lena slapped her own forehead, as if just remembering some minor detail, and held out the slip of paper to her mother-in-law. It was a receipt. "Deliveries unpaid. That's 3,000 rubles, for the movers. Have a wonderful day, Zinaida Pavlovna." Lena turned, stepped neatly around a puddle, climbed back into the taxi, and shut the door. The car pulled away at once, carrying her former daughter-in-law off toward a happy, unburdened life. A heavy silence settled over the courtyard, broken only by the idling rumble of the truck's engine. The two movers approached Zinaida Pavlovna. The wary one wiped his hands on his pants. "So, ma'am, everything's been unloaded per the list. That's 3,000. If you need it carried up to your floor, that's another 1,500 on top." Zinaida Pavlovna stared, wide-eyed, at the mountain of belongings. The puzzle finally clicked into place in her mind, forming a terrifying picture of reality. Before her stood the possessions of a grown, unemployed man, her son, a man who loved to eat well, who needed internet paid for his games, and who now had neither a home nor a wife to fund him. And all of this splendor would now land squarely on her modest pension. Feeding him, housing him, listening to his complaints in her cramped 5-square-meter kitchen. Instead of a restaurant and red fish, life had sent her a bill. A dry, mocking chuckle rippled through the bench. "Well, Zina?" Aleftina Ivanovna called out, shaking out the hem of her skirt. "Quite the rich delivery, isn't it? Some backbone your boys got. Barely fit in the truck. Listen, if there's not enough left over for Kostik's caviar and steak, come by. I'll lend you a bag of oatmeal, neighborly, like." The women on the bench snickered, making no effort to hide how much they were enjoying the free show. And Zinaida Pavlovna, with trembling hands, reached into her purse for the 3,000 rubles, dreading the evening ahead, when her hungry son would show up at the door, fishing rods in hand. Thank you all for listening. This has been Andre Belli. I'd appreciate your support with a like on the channel. Wishing you health, all the best, and see you next time.